Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive on applied wisdom literature for living better. And today we're tackling a pretty fascinating book.
Yes.
Antifragile by Nassim Nicholas Taleb.
It's a good one.
It is. And if you're here, you're probably already on this path of personal growth, figuring out how to be more resilient. And this book really gets into that in a really, really interesting way.
Yeah, I think it goes even beyond resilience, right? It's not just about bouncing back from setbacks. It's about actually benefiting from those challenges.
That's exactly it. It's not just about surviving. It's about coming out the other side stronger than you were before.
Exactly. Think of it like you drop a wine glass, it shatters.
Right.
That's fragile. You've got like a sturdy mug that just kind of sits there.
It's robust.
Right. Exactly. But then you think about like your muscles after a workout.
Yeah.
They get stressed. They actually get a little bit damaged,
right?
But then they rebuild stronger.
So that's anti-fragile.
That's the whole idea, using those stressors to your advantage.
That's the core idea here, and we're going to unpack that today. We've gone through Taleb's book, pulled out some of the key concepts that are really actionable for someone like you who's on this journey of personal growth and trying to figure out how to live a better life, basically.
Yeah, and I think a good place to start is with his idea.
Okay, the triad.
Yeah, he talks about fragile, robust, and antifragile.
Okay.
And he really encourages us to look at different areas of our lives through this lens.
So how would we apply this to our own lives?
Well, think about it. Where do you see fragility in your own life? Maybe you have this perfectly optimized routine,
right?
But then any little hiccup throws everything off.
Oh, yeah.
That's a sign of fragility.
That makes sense because you're so reliant on that one thing.
Exactly. Or like a supply chain that collapses at the first sign of trouble.
Right. Just-in-time inventory, and then suddenly a truck breaks down and everything's messed up.
Exactly. So fragility really doesn't like volatility.
Yeah.
It wants everything to be smooth sailing.
Okay. So fragile things break under pressure.
Pretty much.
Then what about robust?
Robust is more about weathering the storm.
Okay.
Think of a solid habit you stick to no matter what.
Right.
It can handle some disruption, but it doesn't really improve from it.
Okay.
It just endures. It's like that old stone building. It's been standing for centuries.
Right.
But a big enough earthquake will still bring it down.
It's not getting any stronger from the stress?
Exactly. It just stays the same.
Okay, so it's not good, it just is.
Pretty much.
Okay, so that brings us to the anti-fragile, the things that actually benefit from the chaos.
Exactly. And I think this is where it gets really exciting.
Yeah.
Because anti-fragile systems, they need that variability. They need those stressors to learn and evolve.
Okay, so they actually get stronger when things get tough.
Precisely. Think about your immune system.
Right.
It gets stronger by encountering new germs.
Or like you learn more from your mistakes than from your successes.
Exactly. So the big question for you is, how can you design more anti-fragility into your own life?
And that's what we're going to get into. And I think one of the things that Taleb talks about that I found really interesting was this idea of via negativa.
Oh, yeah. Subtraction.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit counterintuitive, right?
Totally.
Because we're always told to add more things.
More habits, more information.
More. But Taleb suggests looking at what's harming us.
Okay.
What's making us vulnerable and cutting that out.
So instead of adding more good stuff, take away the bad stuff.
Exactly. Decluttering your life.
Like Marie Kondoing your habits.
Exactly.
Okay, and this could apply to like anything, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about your information diet.
Okay.
Are there sources that just consistently stress you out? Maybe cutting those out would be more beneficial than trying to consume even more news.
Yeah. That's so true because you know you're always trying to optimize and improve, and sometimes you forget that just taking something away could be.
Just as, if not more beneficial.
Yeah, it's like knowing what not to do is often more important than knowing what to do.
And that's a really powerful concept, I think, that we don't often think about. Another thing that Taleb talks about that I found really interesting was this idea of skin in the game.
Oh, that's a huge one.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this principle is so important, not just for ethical decision-making in the world,
right,
but also for personal growth.
Okay.
Having skin in the game means you have a personal stake in the outcome.
So you feel the consequences of your choices.
Exactly. You're not just giving advice from the sidelines.
Right.
You're actually in the arena.
Yeah.
And when you have skin in the game, it sharpens your focus.
It makes you more careful.
It makes you much more responsible. It also helps you trust others
who
have something to lose if they're wrong.
Right. It's all about accountability. Exactly. If you're going to make a decision, you should be prepared to live with the results.
And I think that's something that we often forget, especially in today's world where it's so easy to just throw out opinions and not have to back them up.
Exactly.
So skin in the game is all about having something to lose. So another idea that Taleb talks about is this barbell strategy.
Yes, the barbell.
Which sounds a bit strange at first.
It does.
But can you break that down for us?
So when we connect this to dealing with uncertainty in your own life,
Okay.
the barbell strategy is incredibly practical.
Okay.
It's about avoiding the middle ground,
Okay.
which can often be the riskiest place to be.
Okay.
Instead, you go to
Extremes. Okay.
on one end, you're super conservative.
Yeah.
You're focusing on safety and security.
So that's like your foundation.
Exactly. It could be having a stable financial foundation,
Okay.
a strong core of reliable skills, or a really supportive network of close relationships. And then on the other end, you take small, calculated risks with potentially big payoffs.
Okay.
So things that could have huge upside, but the downside is limited.
So it's like you're hedging your bets.
Exactly. You're protected from major disasters
Right.
while still being positioned to benefit from those unexpected wins.
Okay, so it's kind of like having a really solid anchor and then sending out some little exploratory ships.
I like that analogy.
If one hits a gold mine, great. If it sinks, no big deal. Your main fleet is still safe.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, so the barbell strategy is all about balancing that security with opportunity. And I think that ties in nicely with another concept that Taleb talks about, which is optionality.
Oh yeah, optionality is key to being anti-fragile.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
So having more choices and the flexibility to adapt to different situations, that's what it's all about. Think about learning a diverse set of skills.
Right.
The more skills you have, the more options you have when you're faced with new challenges or opportunities.
So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And building a broad network of contacts gives you options for support and collaboration.
So it's not just about skills, it's about relationships as well.
It's about everything.
Yeah.
It's about having a diverse portfolio of options,
Okay, so it's about being prepared for anything.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Because you never know what life's going to throw at you.
And you mentioned earlier that anti-fragile systems benefit from stress.
Right.
But obviously too much stress is bad.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So how do you find that sweet spot?
That's where the idea of small stressors comes in.
Okay, small stressors.
Yeah, the key is manageable challenges that don't break you, but make you stronger.
So it's about pushing yourself, but not too much.
Exactly. Think about stepping outside your comfort zone just a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe trying public speaking for the first time,
Okay,
or taking on a slightly more challenging project at work.
right.
These small stresses, when overcome, they build resilience and competence.
So it's about finding that growth zone. Okay, so small stressors are good in the right dose.
They are. It's like the idea of,
Hormesis.
yeah, a little bit of something that's harmful in large doses
Right.
can actually be beneficial in small doses.
So it's all about finding that right balance.
Exactly.
And speaking of balance, Taleb also warns us about the dangers of trying to fix everything.
Oh yeah, the concept of iatrogenics.
Can you explain that one?
So this is really about how our attempts to make things better can sometimes backfire and make them worse.
Oh, so like the cure is worse than the disease?
Exactly. Taleb borrows this from medicine,
Okay.
where it refers to harm caused by medical treatment.
Right.
But he applies it more broadly to any kind of intervention.
Okay.
So often when we try to eliminate all uncertainty
Right.
or control every little detail, we can inadvertently create new problems or weaken natural coping mechanisms.
So it's like trying to micromanage everything.
Exactly. And sometimes the best approach is to just step back and let things unfold naturally.
So sometimes doing nothing is the best course of action.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, that's a good reminder. Finally, Taleb talks about nonlinearity.
Right.
What's the key takeaway there?
So with nonlinearity, it's understanding that the impact of stressors isn't always proportional.
Okay.
Small changes can have big, unexpected consequences, both good and bad.
Okay.
So fragile things often have what's called a concave response.
Concave response.
Yeah, as stress increases, the damage accelerates.
Okay.
Think about debt. A little bit might be manageable, but too much
Right.
can lead to a rapid downward spiral.
Okay.
Antifragile systems, on the other hand, often have a convex response.
Convex.
They benefit more than they lose from increased volatility,
Okay.
up to a certain point, of course.
Right.
So when you're making decisions, it's important to think about these potential nonlinear effects.
So like a small change could have a huge impact.
Exactly. And you don't always know which way it's going to go.
Wow. So we've covered a lot of ground here in our deep dive into Antifragile.
And hopefully you've gotten some really valuable insights and, more importantly, some concrete ideas that you can start applying
to your own personal growth journey today.
Absolutely.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that it's all about shifting your perspective. On uncertainty, instead of fearing it, you learn to see it as a potential source of growth.
Exactly. It's about building a life that not only weathers the storms,
Right.
but actually gets stronger because of them.
And that's a really powerful idea.
It is.
So thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into applied wisdom, literature for living better. Stay tuned for the next one. And if this deep dive helps you out, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Thanks again.